Today, so we finished out the last of the 6 basic fears, but he has one more thing he wants to add, and we're going to be jumping into that, and he calls it the Devil's Workshop, the 7th basic evil. And then we're also going to be talking about how to protect yourself against negative influences, and then I'm going to go through some questions as well that he writes down that if you're watching, take notes. If you're here, write them down as well if you'd like, and I'll make sure to go through it at a good pace so everyone can hear what the questions are saying. But I just want to go ahead and start off. He calls it 7th basic evil. He says, in addition to the 6 basic fears, there is another evil by which people suffer. It constitutes a rich soil in which the seeds of failure grow abundantly, and it is so subtle that its presence often is not detected. This affliction cannot properly be classed as a fear. It is more deeply stated and more often fatal than all of the 6 fears. For want of a better name, he calls it the susceptibility of negative influences. He says, men who accumulate great riches always protect themselves against this evil. The poverty-stricken never do. Those who succeed in any calling must prepare their minds to resist the evil. So, if you neglect this self-analysis that we're going to be going on about in a moment, you will forget your right to attain, you will forfeit your right to attain the object of your desire. So, after we do go through these questions, just kind of strictly self-analyze yourself in some way, because it'll be really good for you. But you're going to go at this very carefully at the same time. Think about it before you just answer the question, because when I ask these, I just want you to write them down. Don't try to answer it immediately, because if you answer it immediately, maybe that may not be the answer you feel is the right answer later. But he talks about how when it comes to these things, you can easily protect yourself against highway robbers because the law provides organized cooperation for your benefit. But the 7th basic evil is more difficult to master because it strikes when you are not aware of its presence, when you are asleep and while you're awake. Moreover, so he may not be saying this, but moreover, it is intangible because it consists merely a state of mind. This evil also is dangerous because it strikes in many different forms as there are human experiences. So we all know who he's talking about. He may not say it out loud, but he knows he's talking about the devil. He's talking about how Satan can come in many forms, and when it comes to a state of mind, Satan is able to come into your mindset and take over sometimes and make you feel horrible and make you be negative around other people and negative towards yourself. So sometimes it enters your mind, he says, through the well-meant words of sometimes your own relatives. 100% Satan. There are times that you may be very close to the people around you and your family, but sometimes when they're not doing very well, they're being very negative, and they say one negative thought to you, immediately it has more impact on you than what your friends may say. Your friends may say something bad, but you're like, whatever, and you kind of disregard it. But when your family says something negative to you, usually you take it more mentally hard, right? Because at other times it bores from within through one's own mental attitude, though. So sometimes it can happen just from your own mentality. It may not be other people. But it talks about how always it is as deadly as poison, even though it may not kill us as quickly. So when the devil takes over and makes you have this negative thought process on yourself, right, it is hard to fight the temptations. That's why you gotta get into the Word and pray, right, and let God be the one who takes over your thoughts. But to protect yourself against negative influences, whether of your own making or the result of the activities of negative people around you, you first must recognize that you have a willpower and put it into constant use until it builds a wall of immunity. Recognize the fact that you and other human beings are, by nature, lazy, indifferent, and susceptible to all suggestions which harmonize with your weaknesses. So he's just stating the obvious fact, because we are humans, right? And by nature, sin is already into our lives. But at the same time, with God, we can fight against that sin. But he's saying, it is true. Naturally, we are humans and we can sin. We're not devoid of it, but we can work to be devoid of it. We can work to have relationship with God to avoid being in a sinful lifestyle constantly. But by nature, yes. Sometimes when we get lazy or we get susceptible to certain things or we are too laid back about certain stuff when people are negative around us, it will easily seep into our negativity that could be in the back of our head somewhere, and that weakness will come out, right? You have to recognize that negative influences often work on you through your subconscious mind, so therefore they are difficult to detect. And keep your mind closed against all people who depress or discourage you in any way. So he's saying completely, if you are around people who, the main thing you know that what they do, right, is get super depressing or discouraging or complain about stuff, they never seem happy about anything, right? Just don't. It can be a huge waste of energy on your part as well, like just your time, right, and your mind, like just your subconscious, your thoughts, you're letting your thoughts think about that certain stuff all the time as well. Because you're like, man, well, I got this friend, and I'm really trying to be there for them, but they're always so sad and blah, 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 or depressed and unhappy, and I can never make them happy. And I try very hard, and there are times that, like, I put so much effort into this, and finally I get, like, a smile or something out of them, but then now I'm all of a sudden drained. It's like, yes, of course you're drained, because it took all of your positivity to make them have one positive thought, and now you're depressed. And now because you're depressed and they're not very good at being very positive in the first place, they're not going to help you get undepressed because they don't know how to be undepressed. They're just, the oppression of the evil is constantly on them because they have no idea how to get into the word or even be positive in their own life in general. They allow everything around them to feel more negative. But he says, clean out your medicine chest, throw away all those pill bottles, and stop pandering to colds, aches, pains, and imaginary illnesses. Talking about, it's mainly a mind thing. Deliberately seek the company of people who influence you as well, to think and act for yourself, right? But to also think and act the way God wants you to think and act as well, right? You want to surround yourself with influences that tell you, hey, be who you were called to be positive, be an influence, right? Act the way God wants you to act, think the way God wants you to think, be just like your daddy God, right? Do not expect troubles, as they have a tendency not to disappoint, right? I like this because he says, do not expect troubles, because when you don't expect trouble, you will not be easily disappointed by things. But when you expect things to go bad, then you will be disappointed by things very easily as well, right? Without a doubt, the most common weakness of all human beings is the habit of leaving their minds open to negative influence of other people. And usually that comes in forms of understanding that you immediately assume, right, that things will go bad. So because you assume things will be bad, you are letting negativity seep into your thought already, so that when it does come, what happens is you actually get disappointed. So I've had plenty of friends do some things that I would say other people would get disappointed in, but because I don't really expect it, or I try to uphold the standard of saying, no, I believe that you can be better than that, I don't get disappointed. I tell them, like, hey, that maybe wasn't the best decision, but it's okay. It's okay. You know, like, I still love you very much, and that's all that matters. Next time, don't do that. But don't think I'm disappointed, because when you tell someone you're disappointed, what usually happens, right? They drop. Whatever depression they were feeling in that moment just gets much worse. Like, they already feel bad about themselves, right? That they made that mistake, or they start feeling negative about themselves in general, and then someone comes up and tell them, wow, you're such a horrible person for doing that. I'm so disappointed in you, and blah, blah, blah. It just makes it worse, and they get worse, and whatever depression they felt just seeps down even more. They may have been thinking about how bad it was, but now it's stuck in their subconscious how bad it was, and they can't get that out, right? It's in the back of their head. They're worried about it consistently, right? So this becomes an insane weakness for them, and now they no longer know what to do, because now they're just crying in their room because they think that the person closest to them can't understand that they made a mistake, right? And because their people around them can't understand that that they see that they made a mistake, and all they do is say, hey, wow, that was horrible, right? And I'm disappointed in what you did. That's not how you make it better, right? If you ever see a parent walk around with a small child who doesn't understand right from wrong just yet, right? They still have no idea. They're trying to figure it out, and they do something, and they get a little upset with them, like, hey, you shouldn't do that, and the kid starts crying. What does a parent usually do, right? They comfort them and say, hey, it's okay. I know you didn't understand. It's not a big deal. Just try not to do that again, okay? I'm not disappointed, right? They comfort their child. Just like how you comfort a child, it's the same thing as you would with your friends and your family as well. We may not be children anymore, but we're still children of God. So even though because we are children of God, what should you do when you have people around you that are not doing well? You comfort them, you listen, and you love on them, right? You don't make people feel like they're disappointments or that they're nobody or that they have to be susceptible to the negative influence of the world. You have to be there for them and show them that love, right? But most people do not recognize, excuse me, they are cursed by this weakness of being, of this neglect or this negative influence sometimes. Many people who acknowledge it, neglect, or refuse to correct the evil until it becomes an uncontrollable part of their daily habits, though. So sometimes people won't acknowledge how much influence or negative influence will actually impact their life, and when they finally do, they don't know how to take the correct measure because it's already in their habit. So to aid those who wish to see themselves as they really are, I will be listing these self-analysis questions. So I would go through them kind of slow, or I'll reread it again just in case you need to listen to it. But if you're watching, this is just, I'm trying my best. I want to be able to help you to acknowledge or understand that there is some things maybe you got to work on, which is okay, right? I'm going to go through these questions myself as well, just whatever, but these are good questions. But he calls them the self-analysis test questions, okay? So if you want to write them down or take notes or whatever you want to do, you're free to do that. But I'll go ahead and start. The first question, he says, do you complain often of feeling bad? And if so, what is the cause? Do you complain often of feeling bad? If so, what is the cause? Number 2, do you find fault with other people at the slightest provocation? Do you find fault with other people at the slightest provocation? Number 3 is, do you frequently make mistakes in your work, and if so, why? So there's a lot of questions, by the way, so I'm going to be reading through a good amount of these. Do you frequently make mistakes in your work, and if so, why? Number 4, are you sarcastic and offensive in your conversation? No. What? Oh, my mom's going to type it in the live feed. So let me re-go through it real fast. Number 2, do you find fault with other people at the slightest provocation? My mom's going to put it in the live feed chat, so if you if you have to watch this later, it should be in the chat later on. I think it'll be on Facebook, not the YouTube one. It will show up on the Facebook one. Do you find fault with other people at the slightest provocation? Number 3 was, do you frequently make mistakes in your work? And if so, why? Do you frequently make mistakes in your work? And if so, why? Number 4, are you sarcastic and offensive in your conversation? I already know the answer to that, so I gotta work on that already. It only happens around people I don't tend to very much like, but that's also a bad thing. I'm praying that out of me. Number 5, do you deliberately avoid the association of anyone? And if so, why? Avoid the association of anyone, and if so, why? Got it? You got it? Do you, shoot, which one am I at? 6. Do you suffer frequently with indigestion? If so, what is the cause? Number 7. You got it? Hope you know how to type fast. No? Do you? Sorry. Number 7. Does life seem futile and the future hopeless to you? If so, why? Does life seem futile and the future hopeless to you? If so, why? So like I said, we're put questions in the chat. I want you, like I said, I want you to be able to try to self-analyze yourself really well with these questions. It'd be really good. You got it? Number 8, I believe. Do you like your occupation? If not, why? Do you like your occupation? If not, why? Do you like your job? Maybe we've talked about this before, so these are all going to be probably reiterating some stuff we've already gone through. I have talked about the fact that if you're not happy in the environment you're in, work-wise, you probably shouldn't stay there. Do you often feel self-pity? And if so, why? Why are you feeling that self-pity? If your answer is yes, you definitely want to write down why. It will help you to understand what you probably need to do. Are you envious of those who excel you? Jealousy is not a good look. I will say that for sure. When you start getting jealous of people who are more successful than you, you will never reach that level of success. It is not possible. I firmly believe that. When you start to get jealous of people who are doing better than you are, you will not reach that. It is when you praise them for how good they're doing, and when you see what they're doing and you take that influence, you'll be able to take that step to excel in your own life. But when you get envious of people who are doing better, it looks bad on you, and it's harder to make friends around you as well who are being successful, because they don't want to keep you around because they see that you're like really rude to them because you're not at their level sometimes, You get envious of those things. To which do you devote most time? Thinking of success or of failure? To which do you devote most time? Thinking of success or of failure? So are you devoting most of your time to success or failure? Whichever mindset you're putting yourself in, obviously that's the mindset you'll reach, right? Success or failure. Are you gaining or losing self-confidence as you grow older? I have noticed that some people, the older they grow, they seem to have less confidence because of the fact that they aren't getting anywhere in life, or they feel like they aren't. So because they already feel like they're not doing anything, the older they get, the less they'll start to do, and the more lazy they start to get because they feel like they're not accomplishing anything, so that confidence starts to dissipate. Do you learn something of value from all mistakes? Do you learn something of value from all mistakes? If you ain't learning from any of your mistakes, you probably need to think about that. Because if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, and you're not learning from that mistake already, from what's going on or what problems it's causing you, I want to firmly encourage you, definitely get in the Word and pray, because you definitely need guidance from God to help you understand that whatever mistake it is that you're making and you can't figure out, even if you can't figure out what it is, because if you're making the same mistake and you don't even realize it, you need God to help you understand what that mistake is. Are you permitting some relative or acquaintance to worry you? Or acquaintance to worry you? If so, why? Are you permitting some relative or acquaintance to worry you? If so, why? This just has to do with the fact of worry. The Bible talks about that worry is a sin in its own right, and when you worry too much about others or even yourself when it comes to certain aspects, it is hard to fully accomplish the things of God because you're allowing doubt to proceed. Because if you can worry about something else, that means you are capable of worrying about how powerful God is and what He can do in your life. Because when you start to doubt and worry, right, you start to doubt and worry God as well, not just people around you. Because if people disappoint you and God doesn't do something for you, then you'll get disappointed in God as well. And you don't need to have that happen. Do not worry, do not fret, right? Are you sometimes in the clouds and at other times in depths of despondency? Are you sometimes in the clouds and other times in the depths of despondency? Some people really are out in nowhere land, I swear. They'll be like, you could be like trying to help them out, give them advice, you know, and you're really trying to be there for them or like even pray with them, and they're just like, what was that? And you're like, man, are you even listening? Oh yeah, no, I'm here, but like, no, you're not. You're not here, man. Your head's somewhere completely else, and somehow you just didn't hear a single thing I just said, and I'm not gonna repeat it because people get frustrated, right? When people aren't listening and their head goes somewhere else, people will get frustrated. They just don't like. They'll stop trying to say what they want to say to you, and then and that's it, Who has the most inspiring influence upon you, and what is the cause? This question is a good one as well. So, who has the most inspiring influence upon you, and what is the cause? Just kind of this is like I said, the self-analysis. Just evaluate who is influencing the most and why, and then I want to add one more thing. Is it a good one? Who has the most inspiring influence upon you? What is the cause? And is it good? I want to add that at the end of that question because you might have people around you that inspire you or have a big influence on you, but they may be a bad influence. And because they're a bad influence, it tends to put you more into a bad state of mind, and you do more ridiculous things. Next one, you ready? Or this is kind of a slow-paced morning, but it's all good. I just want to make sure everyone gets these questions and sees them because they're in my opinion, they're really important, and I want you to really look at this for yourself. Next one, do you tolerate negative or discouraging influences which you can avoid? Do you tolerate negative or discouraging influences which you can avoid? This can also do with your friend group as well. If you have friends that, even though you love them, you extremely tolerate how they act, I wouldn't keep those friends around for much longer. If you tolerate the people around you that you consider closest, that's probably not a good sign for you either, right? Maybe they're not even doing anything necessarily, but this is mainly going against the idea of negative thoughts and negative influence. So like if you're tolerating negative influence around you, then yeah. Next one, are you careless of your personal appearance? If so, when and why? This is just like professionalism in its own. So like if you're going around, right, and you go to somewhere that is people who are a little bit more influenced and you are extremely careless about how you look and you just don't care. There are times that not really caring about your personal appearance is not a big deal, but there are also times that putting up a good personal appearance for some people and making sure that you look professional, right? It just looks good, right? And you don't have to let other people influence or make you feel less about yourself if your personal influence isn't or your personal appearance isn't amazing. But it's still good to put yourself in a mindset that, hey, you need to put yourself out as someone who can make a difference, right? Like, if you think about it, if you were to have someone stand in front of millions of people, right, in PJs and say some quote that's extremely, like, admirable, right? People are going to be less susceptible probably to that person because he's in pajamas and be like, well, he probably doesn't really mean it because he doesn't really seem to care. He came out here in PJs in front of millions of people. But then you got a guy who walks up in a nice suit, whose voice is right, a little, like, might seem a little more meaningful, knows how to put the words right? You're more susceptible to listen to the guy in the suit who is making his words sound right than the guy in PJs who might be making his words sound good. You know what I mean? Because to everyone else, everyone's like, oh, wow, he's in his PJs. It's the same thing with the phone thing. I've noticed that there are times that when you're having conversation with people and someone pulls out their phone, puts it on the table, it looks like they're going to ignore that person. I'm less susceptible to having a conversation with someone if I see their phone in front of them than I am if I see their phone's gone. Because in my opinion, I realize that my conversation probably won't matter as much to that person because their phone is out in front of them. So it's that's, like I said, personal appearance can be anything. It doesn't have to necessarily be clothing. It can also be the way you put out yourself and everything else. So just like this, it becomes a distraction for them. I might be having a conversation, but I see their phone's there and I see their phone goes off, and I am awaiting the idea that he might look at his phone and stop listening to my conversation. So yeah, it's not just personal appearance and clothing, but your outward personal appearance as well, how you project yourself. Have you learned how to drown your troubles by being too busy to be annoyed by them? Yeah, workaholics. Have you learned how to drown your troubles by being too busy to be annoyed by them? I think that's that could be really hurtful on some people. I might go through these and then I'll go on we can go on and I can put it in the comments after. Or too busy to be annoyed by them. Next one. Would you call yourself a spineless weakling if you permitted others to do your thinking for you? Basically, would you call yourself a loser? Would you feel like would you call yourself a nobody, basically? Would you call yourself a spineless weakling, is how he puts it, if you permitted others to do your thinking for you? That's just basically letting yourself be influenced by everything around you. Like, you're allowing the influence of others to be your ultimate decision maker. Next one. You ready? Do you neglect internal bathing until auto intoxication makes you ill-tempered and irritable? So these are very deep thinking questions. Do you neglect internal bathing? Yes, internal bathing until auto intoxication. Auto intoxication makes you ill-tempered and irritable. Ill-tempered and irritable. That's a good question. That's a very deep thinking question. I guess if I were to somewhat break it down, just in case you don't really understand what it's saying, he's basically saying the internal thought process of yourself. Like, do you neglect that internal the thought process of being more positive in your own life until eventually saying, like, the auto suppression, right? Like, sometimes negative thoughts will just kind of automatically just hit you. So this is basically saying, do you neglect the idea of actually, like, meditating in the word, right? Like, if we were to put it into a more biblical sense, Do you neglect meditating in the Word, praying to God, staying in the Word, allowing God to come into your life and help you heal from certain things until basically like allowing the devil to do whatever he wants, and then all of a sudden you're just like you're upset, you know? Like negativity just pours in because you didn't allow yourself to heal. You just kind of let that bathe, you know? You let the negative thoughts bathe in yourself constantly until it just immediately just made you feel horrible again. How many preventable disturbances annoy you? And why do you tolerate them? How many preventable disturbances annoy you, and why do you tolerate them? Basically, things that you are capable of stopping, right? There are a lot of times that if you are just like, just to kind of break this question down again, allowing yourself to not make a decision. Yeah, I've mentioned this before. I hate, with a very deep passion, I hate when things can't be made quickly. Like if you can't make a decision thoroughly, right, and you have to sit there and bounce stuff constantly between people, like you're not capable of making a decision, then things will never get done, right? If there's one thing that I've noticed, that if you can don't make a quick decision just to make a quick decision. Obviously, try to make the smartest decision you can, but don't take so long that you have too many disturbances happening at the same time, right? But you want to be able to make quick, smart, wise decisions, right? You want to be capable of doing that. So this question is just, if you have preventable disturbances that annoy you, there are things that do annoy you, but you were able to prevent it from happening in the first place, why are you letting it happen? Next one is, so this might be a tough one for some people, do you resort to liquor, narcotics, or cigarettes to quiet your nerves? Do you resort to liquor, narcotics, or cigarettes? Or weed, for that matter. Weed's a big one for a lot of people. Do you resort... Well, narcotics is part... I guess weed is part of narcotics. Food as well. That's a good point. Do you resort to food as well to quiet your nerves? That's a good one. Do you resort to food as well as part of that? So, do you resort to liquor, narcotics? Weed is part of narcotics, but I'll just put it out there because it's the biggest one for people. Cigarettes or food to quiet your nerves? If so, why do you not try willpower instead? Remember we talked about the Tower of Babel? Right? Right? When they were building the tower, God even admits that humans' willpower is so strong, basically, right? He says they are capable of doing anything. So if these people are capable of doing anything, and God could admit that human beings' willpower alone is capable of doing vast amount of things, then how come we allow ourselves to be taken over by the common worldly standards of living?
Even like watching television or movies or gaming can be just a way to numb me to not think about things.
Yeah, it's a good point. So my mom wants me to put this out there as well, just because of we have this in the world as well. Social media, gaming, TV, all of it. Like, there are times that you can watch TV just for fun. You can be on social media for fun, play video games just to hang out with friends. There's nothing like, there's a positive impact that you can make on all these different platforms as well. But she's also right. When it comes to resorting to quieting your nerves, people will go to liquor, narcotics, drugs, cigarettes, food, games, television, social media. They will go to all these things because they're like, oh, I'm feeling horrible about myself, or they're super down about something, or they're being extremely negative. So what they'll do is they'll project this negativity or these emotions on the stuff. There are a lot of times that I play games, and anyone that's watching, if you play Call of Duty, you know that there are people who will express random emotion and get upset and say a lot of horrible things to other people just because they're having a bad day. Same thing with social media. People will look at social media stuff, see that someone's doing okay, or something is fun for them, or they're happy on their social media platform, or they post something cool, and people are like, oh, that's stupid. That's not even that funny. Why would you post that? And like, they're really negative in the comment sections, And the same thing for videos like this. There are people that will probably even like Like if the stuff we do here at church, people will send negative thoughts and be horrible, and it's like, why are you going to project what's going on in your life to quiet yourself to make you feel better by being mean to other people on social media? I find that something that's really stupid. People will purposely go on social media websites and other things just to put mean comments underneath people, just to make themselves feel better because they're trying to be mean to someone else. To be like, yeah, that's right. I made myself out there. I put my word. It's like that's mean though. Like, why would you allow yourself to project that way? Next one. Does anyone nag you? And if so, for what reason? So this is just a small one. If people are just nagging at you and you find it annoying, like for what reason do you find it? Does anyone nag you, and if so, for what reason? Next one. Do you have a definite major purpose? And if so, what is it? And what plan have you for achieving it? If you do not have a definite purpose, find your definite purpose. But if you already have your definite purpose, make sure you write down what it is. But you need to write down how you plan to achieve it as well, because when you can figure this out, it will help you in the long run. Can I say the next one?
Yeah.
Next one. Do you suffer? So we just talked about these. Do you suffer from any of the 6 basic fears? If so, which ones? So this is important. So when you answer this, make sure you want to answer it truthfully to yourself. Obviously, I won't be seeing it, so you don't have to worry about me seeing it or worry about me judging you or someone else judging you. Remember, this is you self-analyzing yourself. This is for yourself. This is to uplift yourself and your own success and in your walk with Christ as well. But are you suffering from any of the 6 basic fears, and if so, why? And which ones? Have you a method by which you can shield yourself against negative influence of others? If you do not answer this with the Bible or God, then yeah, no, I'm just joking. But do you have a method which you can shield yourself against negative influence of others? I would say yes, right? Praying to God, getting in the Word, right? Worshiping even could help me to shield myself from the negative influence of other people. But if there are other ways you have to do things, like when you're in public and people are being negative, if there are ways you gotta kind of with your own willpower shut that off. If there's a way you can shield against it, good. Next one, do you make deliberate use of auto-suggestion to make your mind positive? So remember how we talked about auto-suggestion is the subconscious idea that you're allowing your brain to work into a habit to understand how to auto-suggest positivity in a way. So like when things are not going that great, because you have put yourself in a habit of staying happy and whole and staying in the Word, you have a way of letting your mind to immediately fight negativity. Do you make a deliberate use of auto-suggestion to make your mind positive? Am I good? Next one, which do you value most? Your material possessions or your privilege of controlling your own thoughts? So do you value, right, your mind and who you are, or do you value material and worldly things more? Which do you value most? Your material possessions or your privilege of controlling your own thoughts? There are quite a lot of questions, so I'll say some more, and then I could probably finish. Yeah, there's a lot. I'll finish it later so that everyone can see what they are, which will be good. But I'm just kind of going through these so that everyone gets an idea. I'll do 2 more, and then I'll go ahead and I'll kind of finish off some of what he's saying. But Are you easily influenced by others against your own judgment? So like you've already made a judgment call, you already think it's not the best idea, but you're deciding it's fine, you know. Are you easily influenced by others against your own judgment? That tends to happen a lot. A lot of people who can make a better decision in the moment still let others influence them, even if it's not right to them. A lot of good people, too. And just to state, Christians, a lot of Christians seem to get very enveloped by that as well. They have friends around them that are all very bad influences, and they'll go out and party and whatever, and they'll be like, just one time, please, please, please. I know you've never done it. I know you're a good kid, but just come with us just one time. I feel like you'll have fun, and you'll allow yourself to go and do it, even though it's against your better judgment, and usually it never ends well. And then I'll put one more question, and then I'll type out the rest of them later for everybody. Has today added anything of value to your stock of knowledge or state of mind? Has today added anything of value to your stock of knowledge or state of mind? So is there anything today? You can go back to that question constantly, because remember, these are self-analysis questions. So you can go back to these at any time. So it could be the next day, the week after, or a year after from now, even if you wanted to. But you just look at the day currently and be like, hey, is this adding any value or knowledge, or the things that I'm doing today? But I'll type out the rest of these questions later. But what we're trying to get through is, so if you answer any of these questions truthfully, you'll know more about yourself than the majority of people. So study the questions very carefully. Like I said, I'll put the rest of them in there. Come back to them once a week or for several months, whatever you have to do, and you'll be amazed at how much experience you'll gain, how much more knowledge you'll gain from just doing this, and how much more you'll see from yourself, and how much more you'll understand yourself as well. You have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts. So whatever thoughts you put down, that's truly how you probably think. Because this is the most significant and inspiring of all facts known to man. It reflects man's divine nature, truly who you are, right? When you say you want to be one with God, your thoughts are definitely the things that are going to align with God. If your thoughts can align with God's thoughts, then you can be who God called you to be. But this divine prerogative is the sole means by which you may control your own destiny, right? If you fail to control your own mind, you may be sure you will control nothing else. If you can't even have your own willpower, if you're not capable of using your own willpower to control how you need to do things, right, and to make decisions, then of course, trying to have people around you to be an influence or be a leader in any way, or be successful in any way, it probably will not come because you're not even capable of controlling yourself. That's why most people, when they say, hey, if you want to be in a level of success, right, you need to find out who you are first, right? You need to find out who you are first. It is good to go out of your way to help people to understand who they are, who they want to be, what they're going to be. But I'll be honest, how are you going to tell someone else how they're supposed to be if you have no clue of who you are in God or who you are as a person, right? It's very hard to make influence if you have no idea, right? Like if someone were to ask you right now what it is you want to do with your future and what it is you're going to do, what kind of influence you want to make, I could easily answer those questions for them because I may not be there right now, but I understand where I want to be. I understand what God calls me to be, and I understand where He wants me to influence. I may not be there yet, but I know God will get me there soon. But if you must be careless with your possessions, let it be in connection with material things, because your mind is your spiritual estate. Protect and use it with the care to which divine royalty is entitled. You were given a willpower for the purpose of making a difference. Unfortunately, there is no legal protection against those who, either by design or ignorance, poison the minds of others by negative suggestion. This form of destruction should be punishable by heavy legal penalties, is how he puts it, because it may and often does destroy one's chance of acquiring material things which are protected by law. Men with negative minds tried to convince Thomas Edison that he could not build a machine that would record and reproduce the human voice, because they said no one else had ever produced such a machine, but Edison did not believe them. He knew that the mind could produce anything the mind could conceive and believe, and that knowledge was the thing that lifted the great Edison above the common herd. you have to remember the amount of technological advancement we made from like 1880 just to 1960 was insane. We didn't have a telephone or none of this stuff, electricity. None of it was even like a thing. And that was 30 years before the 1900s. And all of a sudden, right when we get into the 1900s, like the first 30 years of it, electricity. You know, like we get electricity, we got light bulbs, we got guns, all these different things, like more advanced weapons. We started having this and that, a way of recording our voice, pictures, right? Cameras, a vehicle was made. All these things were made in the span of like 50 years. When 50 years prior to that, we had no idea what any of that stuff was. And 50 years prior to that, this wasn't even a thought process. And 100 years before that, we had no idea, right? Like when America first established itself in the 1700s, no one had a single idea about making a light bulb. Like that was not even that probably wasn't even a thing yet. And the idea of making a vehicle really wasn't a thing in the mind. This whole advancement of human technology happened within a span of literally like 60 to 50 years. And now we've expanded even further. We took these ideas, made them crazier, right? Done even more with it. So Edison believed that anything was possible, and that is true. Anything truly is possible. I mean, we have electric cars now. Like, those things are crazy, honestly. The fact that you don't have to spend any money on gas and you just drive around, because gas is a huge thing. But men with negative minds also told Hugh Woolworth he could his plans with faith, exercising his right to keep other men's negative suggestions out of his mind. He piled up a fortune of more than $100 million. 5 and dimes, right? Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Now, if you go to that store, it's false. Not everything there is 5 and dime. I'll be honest. Some of it's like $1. It's all lies. It's no longer a 5 and dime store. It's just a name. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's still a cool store. You can find some things in there that are really cheap. And surprisingly enough, if you want to find some good candy, 5 and dimes is the place to go. If you want to find some candy that you can't find at any other store anymore, I found some unique candies I can't find at Walmart or Dollar General or any. Some people 50 years, but some people maybe 60. But but some of the candies, oh my gosh, there's candy that existed like 50 years ago that no longer exists, and I found that in the 5 and dime store, and I was like, I'm buying that immediately. I was like, I've never tried that. That looks cool. But, it's unique. But also the same thing, men with negative minds told George Washington that he could not hope to win against a vastly superior force of British. But he exercised his divine right to believe. Therefore, this book was published under the protection of Stars and Stripes, while the name of Lord Cornwallis has been all but forgotten. Right? Doubting Thomas's scoffed scornfully when Henry Ford tried out his first crudely built automobile in the streets of Detroit. Some said the thing never would become practical. Others said no one would pay money for such a contraption. Well, now look where we're at. We're paying for tons of different vehicles that are overly priced. But that's just me. But Ford said, I'll belt the earth with dependable motor cars. And he did. Right? His decision to trust his own judgment has already piled up a fortune far greater than the next 5 generations of his descendants can squander. For the benefit of those seeking vast riches, let it be remembered that practically the sole difference between Henry Ford and a majority of more than 100,000 men who work for him is this. Ford has a mind and controls it. The others have minds which they do not try to control. Right? They are controlled. So Ford has a mind and he controls it. And others have minds which they do not try to control. So they don't even try. They allow everything else to control them. Right? Henry Ford has been repeatedly mentioned because his outstanding example of what a man with a mind of his own and a will can control can accomplish. His record knocks the foundation from under the time-worn alibi, I never had a chance. Ford never had a chance either, but he created an opportunity and backed it with persistence until it made him richer than ever, right? Mind control is a result of self-discipline and habit. Now, that does not mean you can control other people's minds, necessarily. But you either control your mind or it will control you. There's no hallway compromise. The most practical of all methods for controlling the mind is the habit of keeping it busy with a definite purpose, backed by a definite plan. And you must study the record of any man who achieves noteworthy success. He says any man. It doesn't matter if that man is a bad influence or, whatever. Even he has some practical understanding of what he did, right? It may not seem like that, but there are people who are out there who are horrible, right, in history. But they somehow got to a place of leadership by some practical means, right, of having some kind of determination in some way, even if it wasn't good, right? Even Hitler, none of us like Hitler. He was like in history, like obviously it was really bad, but even Hitler, even with how he was and how bad he was and the influence he did, even in his influence, what did he do, right? He turned a whole nation, right? The whole nation backed him up because of how strong of a leader he was and said, yeah, let's go to war. Let's do it, right? Something about what Hitler did, the practicality of his influence even, of what he did and the mindset he had, is still something that we can study. Now, you don't want to end up like him, obviously, or what he did, but he still had practical means, right? There were still practical means of success and the things that he did that was still noteworthy, even if it was not a good noteworthy of what he did, that you can still take notes of. And just like anyone else, people of good and bad influence, you can study everyone who has levels of success in some way, right? Who exercise control over who they are and direct it toward an attainment, right, of definite objectiveness or objectives or a way of doing things, right? They all had some way of controlling what they wanted to do, successful in whatever it was that they wanted to do, and they reached their definite goal. So without that control, success would not have been possible. If Hitler was no way in any way whatsoever influential to the people of Germany, right? If he was no way influential, he wouldn't have accomplished all he wanted to try to accomplish. He probably wouldn't have been able to go to war either properly, right? Like the whole thing that happened, he would not have been able to achieve what he was trying to do. And he wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that he wanted to do because guess what? No one would have backed him up, right? If he was of no way any influence whatsoever. Same thing with Ford. If Ford had no control over his own mind or his willpower, right, he would have not been able to be successful in what he was trying to do in building the automotive car that he had, right? That goes for everyone. Any successful invention, any person of success, any person of influence in any way whatsoever, right? Even when we vote for presidency, what usually happens, right? We vote for the person that we believe is the most influential in our opinion, right? When we vote for the person that we believe is the most influential to us, who will make the best standing, who will probably do the most, in your opinion, right? Who we think is better, successful to be in that place, and who lines up with how we believe, right? So it'll be the same thing. People will follow someone of influence who they believe, right, will be better at what they're doing and make impact on how they do it, or with how they do it. So yeah. But I'm already kind of past my time, so I'm going to go ahead and close off in prayer. But the questions that we were talking about a moment ago, I believe we can put them in the Facebook comment thing still, right? So I'll make sure to write all those down, so when you go back to the live or the video, you can just scroll through the question or the comments, and you should be able to find all the questions. I encourage you to write them all down, just self-analyze. It doesn't matter if you're young or a little bit older. I don't care what age you are in general. These questions will still be good. They'll still help you in whatever way they want them to help. But I'll go ahead and end off prayer. Thank you, Lord, for everyone that's here and for everyone that's watching. I pray that we take the questions that I mentioned and we analyze who we are, and we just pray and we take them to you, God, and that we we pray that you help us understand what it is that we want to do and how we want to succeed. And I pray that we take that next step. If you are unable to take the step, I pray that you're going to be capable of taking the next step in your life to be more successful in whatever plan or purpose that you believe you have with God. In the name of Jesus, amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Well, I'm almost done with this. Doesn't feel fast. There's some stuff in here as well that I'll mention. There's a conclusion chapter in here that I kind of want to go through.